When you talk about grease the groove, what do you think of?
Grease the groove is a sub-maximal way of training where you do several sets throughout the course of the day with long rest between, and you're not getting anywhere near failure. It's not a workout. It's completely separate of that. You could think of it as just a mini attempt just sprinkled throughout the day. So example being, you do your maximum planche hold on something is 10 seconds. A good range for intensity for grease the groove, depending on where you read, but around 50 to 70% of your max.
Yeah, dude, that's exactly word by word.
So you do a 5-second planche and you would do a number of sets that you're able to recover on. So say anywhere from it could be 4 to 10, something like that. You could do that 5 days a week.
That is, it's kind of scary how close that is to my definition. When I looked it up, I couldn't find anyone defining it like we did. But for some reason, there's a general understanding that this is how you grease the groove, right? So
I think it's you come out of the womb if you're destined for calisthenics, and you've got this natural selection pre-programming of how grease the groove works.
Honestly, dude, but this is exactly what my understanding was. I looked at the best athletes, right? And most French athletes are extremely strong at planche. Like most static, the OTZ clan, these dudes are banging out 30-second full planches. Then after the 30-second, they go to a one arm, and then they Victorian with the best form ever, and then they do Victorian straight arm pulls, insane movements. But the thing is that I've noticed in them, a lot of them utilize their own way of grease the groove. The thing they all share is there's a high frequent attempts of the movements that they're training at a sub-max level. So like what you just basically said, the important thing is they're doing planches, for example, very frequently, sometimes up to 5 to 7 times a week throughout the day. And they don't go to failure. They have workouts where they do failure. And I found it interesting because that's kind of how I got my front lever. I got my front lever by just every time I went down the stairs, and I would just do a front lever hold for 2 seconds. And eventually I could hold for 4 seconds, and I wouldn't feel tired. And I would 7, I wouldn't feel tired. And I didn't go beyond the 9 to 10. And I did that for years and years without thinking about it. It was just the thing I would do. Front lever. And before I knew it, I could hold it for 45 seconds, even though front lever wasn't my main thing that I was training. I was focusing on planche. Planche, I had 3 planche days in the week, but I would only have grease the groove for front levers. And my front levers would be much stronger. Obviously, there are a lot of reasons why my front lever is much stronger than my planche. A lot of genetic things going on. I think the grease the groove part of it adds to the equation. And I think something that I'm getting more and more interested in is implementing grease the groove in pretty much all the cycles. I almost can't find a reason why you shouldn't. I can only find reasons why you should.
I would say that if you're doing grease the groove on an exercise, but you're also doing that heavily in your workouts multiple times per week, that would be excessive. That's the key point. Whatever you're deciding to grease the groove, you're doing so much cumulative volume on that movement multiple times per day, multiple days per week. You don't really need to do it as much in your sessions. You can target the muscles involved with a workout itself that's just completely separate of that. Keep doing your pull-ups, keep doing your rows, but not in the front lever respect.
No, it's a very good point. That would be one of the reasons not to do it. You're right. If you're already doing 2 to 3 times training, you're training heavily planche, maybe you shouldn't do 5 times grease the groove at the same time. So maybe there's even an argument of it being healthy, for your tendons. Maybe this is a great way to do tendon preparation for your planches, for your multis, for your front levers, etc., for your iron crosses. If I look at the strongest athletes that do grease the groove, they're basically doing this, and they don't seem to get injured as much as I thought. I don't have a study to prove this. I don't have the data, but it's awfully convenient.
As a practical look at this, with my background in physiotherapy, if we look at tendon health, rehab, prehab, that type of thing, if we want to make tendons stronger, we've got different tiers of movements that we can do. If someone's really aggravated, they're in pain, discomfort, we start them out with isometrics because it's the most tolerable. Then we move on to eccentric only loading. And then after that is okay, we move on to the full range of motion stuff. So if we look at grease the groove, if we want it to be as safe and effective as possible, doing it with isometric static skills, front levers, planches, handstands, it's going to be okay, especially if you're choosing a intensity as you should be, that 50 to 70%. You're doing a amount of sets that you can recover from, doesn't beat up your body. You're doing a frequency per week that you can recover from. You'll also be okay. Where Grease the Groove could be a little bit more risky and you'd have to be really calculated with what you're doing, you want to improve a one-arm chin-up, or you want to get a one-arm chin-up. So you're going to do Grease the Groove throughout the day, multiple days per week, because you have that eccentric component, highly stressful. And if you're doing full range of motion assisted one-arm chins multiple times throughout the day, it's going to be a lot more loading on the tendons. This isn't to say that you're going to get injured because of doing this in a Grease the Groove fashion. By doing that, as well as your regular training, it's a lot for the tendons. And you'll have to be more mindful with how you approach Grease the Groove. But I'm not surprised that isometrics for Grease the Groove are not only safe, but also effective.
And what would you say with that in mind? What if they only do the concentric?
That's another good point. Yeah, because that's not as neurologically taxing. We know if we only do the concentric, you'll build strength through the range of motion, which is also nice. And that would be a good stepping stone before doing your full range stuff.
I think in the past, there was a period where I have done specifically what you just mentioned, one-arm pull-up, Grease the Groove.
I did as well. That's why I brought up the example.
Yeah, it's a very interesting example.
I say that because one of the examples, when you look up Grease the Groove online, you tend to come across Pavel Tsutsouline, who made this popular with kettlebells type of movements. He was very strength focused. So if people want to look into that, there's a lot of good information relating to that. But it's commonly recommended Grease the Groove for pull-ups. But we just think if we've been doing calisthenics for a while, okay, why don't we just logically do that with one-arm chin? But man, that's a whole different beast. I'm telling you what, the ones that can make it to the one-arm chin-up that don't get golfer's elbow is few and far between, because we tend to get very overzealous with frequency, volume, intensity. You think that, oh yeah, just going from 2 to 1 arm is going to be okay. But it's probably more than double the load going through.
Definitely in terms of connective tissue. It's just an anecdote. I remember doing that, and I remember specifically choosing to only do the concentrics back then. Back then I could do it with 10 kilos. So I would just hop on the bar and just hang with one arm, do concentric, and I would get the other arm there to lower me down, and then I would walk away. And I would do that like maybe 4 times a week, maybe 3 times a day, and it did miracles for me. Would I recommend it? Probably not. I'm kind of a freak when it comes to pulling. I don't think I would recommend that. I would recommend it for front lever pulls, for example. There's so little that can go wrong with front lever pulls. And the nice thing about the concentric is I remember also a period, handstand push-up concentrics, and eventually it was so easy, I was so explosive, I would grab a weight vest and I would increase the weight every 3 weeks. I would add 1 kilo. And at some point I could do completely cold, 17 kilo added handstand push-up concentrics. At that point, I don't think I've ever been as strong as handstand push-ups as that period, and that's like 8 to 9 years ago. These are interesting anecdotes, and I think there's definitely something there for doing isometric and concentrics and not doing the eccentrics when you're doing Grease the Groove. And I think there's also a lot of arguments of doing them almost always as a calisthenics athlete, at least after you've done the 1 year of bulking and the cutting, and then you skip the whole bulking and cutting. You do a bit of main gaining where you have hypertrophy cycles every now and then you would have this throughout this entire thing.
Stay safe, kids, please. Play the long game.
FitnessFAQs has the ultimate calisthenics system. Build muscle, get stronger, and increase flexibility. Shop FitnessFAQs and unlock your full potential.